Testing, one, two. Is that working? Got my control guy up in the box there. I am a really comfortable guy with being interrupted because I'm ADD. I love to be interrupted. So please, if you have a question in the middle of my presentation, please ask. If you have a comment that you want to make, if you've got some experience you want to share, something you think would be valuable for the rest of the group to hear, I'm very, very comfortable with you interrupting me at any time as this goes along. I'm going to begin with a story, and it's called The Golden U. One of the things that I do, I'm kind of a junkie in terms of subscribing to things that give me a quick hit on a daily basis of a perspective, just something new. And one of the things, I am not a good reader. I do not enjoy reading. I would rather sit and talk with someone about a book that they read, or I'd rather watch the video. But I'm not a good reader. And I'm blessed that I signed up for Optimize Plus One. And what Brian Johnson does is Brian Johnson is a voracious reader. And every day I get an email from him, literally every day, 365 days a year, with his synopsis of a book. And it's his story, from a leadership perspective that he thinks would be valuable. And when I was designing this presentation last fall on Discovering Your Authentic Leadership, it just happened that the first time that I delivered it to the Association for Corporate Growth, I got a story from Brian that day that I thought really fit this notion of your authentic leadership. And so I'm going to actually read verbatim Brian's story from that day. So we've been pretty intense lately with all this champion talk. Before we go any further, I want to make one thing really clear. Basically, you're already a champion. You're already the best version of yourself. It's less about trying to get to it. It's more about simply allowing the best version of yourself to shine more fully and consistently in your life. Alan Cohen tells a great story at the very beginning of his documentary, Finding Joe. The story goes something like this. A long time ago in a land far, far away, there was a huge, bigger-than-life Buddha statue. Get this, it was pure gold, like 100% jumbo pure gold. It was astonishingly beautiful, truly epic. Then one day an invading army was cruising into town. The monks decided to flee, and they knew the army would destroy the statue, so they quickly covered it in mud and whatever else they could find to make it look less awesome before they left. The army conquered the land but didn't notice the statue. The trick worked. Much later, new monks returned to the temple. They looked at the statue and they thought it was just a ho-hum Buddha statue. Then one day, a crack showed up in the ho-hum Buddha statue. Something glimmered below the surface. What was that? They looked a little closer, got some tools, and chipped away a little more. It was something golden. They chipped away a little more, and then they splashed some water on it to clean it off, and lo and behold, it was gold. Yes, it's a priceless golden statue, like 100% jumbo gold. The moral of the story is somewhere along the line, we've all gotten covered in mud. Somewhere along the line, we've all gotten covered in mud. But you got to know that you're that golden Buddha. You're solid gold, baby, like 100% pure gold. So know this, we didn't need to do anything, per se, to make ourselves into that golden version of ourselves. We just need to chip away at the stuff that's getting in the way of that radiant awesomeness. And it was interesting, I was sitting with my friends Mark and Teresa Potter visiting, and one of the things we were just talking about is, Mark made the comment that when you think about children, that they are so authentic, they're so real, they tell you exactly what they think, they just put it out there. They have no pretensions whatsoever. But then at a certain age, that all changes. And what happens is we as society, through friendships and education and everything else, we start packing mud on the bodies of kids, and that authenticity that is central to who they are starts to change. And kids start to get really confused about who they really are. And the notion of discovering your authentic leadership, we have a Latin phrase that's posted on the walls in our office. It says animus tibi est. Anybody know Latin? Anybody know what that is? Animus tibiae is the courage to be you. And at Pondera, in our leadership consulting practice, the thing that we work hard at helping leaders and helping leadership teams learn to do is to be courageous enough to be themselves. 9 times out of 10, when a client asks me to get involved with a problematic employee, 9 times out of 10, it's because there is not alignment between who the person is and the job that they're in. The person's in the wrong job. It's not because they're a bad person. It's not because they don't want to do a good job. They're just in the wrong job. Now, a lot of times, companies do that to people. They promote people beyond their competence. They get them in the wrong jobs. But a lot of times, we do that to ourselves. Because of income we want to make, because of prestige that we want to have, we put ourselves in the wrong roles. And then all of a sudden, we find ourselves dreading going to work every day because we spend the day doing things that aren't a good fit for who we are. And the thing that we try to get our clients to get clear about is, who are you? And when you show up at work every day, do you get to just be you? Do you just be yourself? Do you just express your gifts? Or do you always have to be thinking about how you have to be different than who you are? And I can tell you, I was a guy that wore one of those masks for a long time because, as was shared in my introduction, I was a business manager of a school district and then a superintendent of the schools of a couple of school districts, and I worked for school districts where when I was a superintendent, I didn't have a business manager. I was the business manager. And for those 12 years of my life, I had jobs where I had to negotiate contracts, I had to do budgets, I had to do facility planning, I had to do all kinds of detailed work, where I spent a lot of my days sitting at a computer, analyzing data and going through all those kinds of things. And for those 12 years of my life, I would go to conferences and I would talk to other men and women that were in the same job I was, and I never found anybody that worked as much as I did. I worked evenings, I worked weekends, I worked all the time. Now, my ego from age 29 to 41 was that I was just more dedicated than everybody else, that nobody else wanted it as much as I did, and that's why I worked so much. I was too stupid to realize that I was in the wrong job. I worked all those hours because I was doing work that wasn't a good fit for me. I'm not a guy who can focus. I'm not a guy who digs into the details and analyzes data and all that kind of stuff, and yet I did it for 12 years. 12 years. And the 12 years that I did it were the formative years of raising our boys. And, where's Dad? He's at the office. Where's Dad? He's at the office. I was working all the time. And so not only did I pay a price but my family suffered because I was in the wrong job. And I'm blessed that today I love what I do. And I've been doing this. This is my 14th year at Pondera. And I can tell you that in 14 years, I have never once had a day where I didn't get out of bed and go, I get to go to work today. My wife's been retired for 2 years. And she's like, yeah, I want to go to work. I don't want to retire. I love what I do. It is so much of who I am that it's so easy to show up and do that. And that's my goal when I work with clients, is to help people make sure that they're doing what they love to do. Because everything is so much easier when we have the courage to be ourselves. At Pondera, we believe that becoming a leader is a lifelong journey. You never arrive. If you're really interested in being as good as you can be, you got to get comfortable with the fact that you'll never get there. Because there's so much to learn. There's so much to be able to learn to be more successful. Discovering Your Authentic Leadership, we sent you the article to read ahead of time by George Sims McLean. Excuse me. You can see I'm technically challenged too. In that article, here's a quote: "The challenge is to understand ourselves well enough to discover where we can use our leadership gifts to serve others. Discovering your authentic leadership requires a commitment to developing yourself. Like musicians and athletes, you must devote yourself to a lifetime of realizing your potential." At Pondera, my business partner and I developed our own personality assessment. When we started our firm 14 years ago, we researched the market, and we did not find a tool that we felt was comprehensive enough, that was technology-based, that would give our clients the kind of information that we wanted. And so we went on the path and we developed our own tool. And one of the things that will happen is we get new people that come into our firm, and they may be sitting with me, and they'll observe me working with a client and observe me interpreting our tool and taking people through it, and they're often, in awe about the fact that how well I get people and understand them. And I told them, folks, I've been doing this. This is my 14th year. I put in my 10,000 hours. You got to pay the price. You got to invest the time to develop your potential. And there's too many people that shortcut the process. They don't stay engaged long enough to really develop the skills. You got to keep working at it. And I realize that even though I feel really good about what I do today, we still have a staff meeting every 2 weeks where, together with our consultants, we're working on learning and figuring out how do we even get better at what we do. We'll never arrive. The whole notion of potential really got burned into my brain when I was a student at Michigan State. Because when I was a student at Michigan State, I met a guy by the name of Magic Johnson. My 5th year at Michigan State, and I was there for 5 years, not because I changed majors. I was there for 5 years because I had 2 spring terms where I had 11 out of 12 credits of 0 point, because all I did was party and play softball. I did not go to class, and so I almost flunked out of the university twice, so I had to go a 5th year. My 5th year, I'm playing for the intramural championships in softball. And the guys that I'm playing with from my floor, we're playing a team called Potential. And we show up, and it's the Michigan State basketball team. It is Magic Johnson, Greg Kelser, Bob Chapman. They had this is the spring of 1978. They had just lost to Kentucky when Magic was a freshman in the Elite Eight. And they came back, and they had a goal-setting session with Judd Heathcote. And they started talking about their goals for next year. And they talked about winning the Big Ten. They talked about qualifying for the tournament. They talked about winning the tournament, et cetera. And what they decided to do was we only have one goal for next year. Our goal is to play to our potential. That's it. That's the only goal that we have, is to play to our potential. That's the only thing we want to focus on, is that we want to talk about being as good as we can be, and we want to see how far we can ride that. Well, that next season, they went on and they won the national championship. And they played their potential. And Magic Johnson went on and won several NBA titles. Some people sometimes question when I use that story about Magic, because Magic is the guy who contracted AIDS because of unprotected sex with lots of women. And yet Magic Johnson was a guy who chose to still focus on his potential even when he got that potential death sentence, to say, I'm going to make whatever life I have left the very best I can of that life. And I think he's done a pretty good job of that today. The journey to authentic leadership begins with understanding the story of your life. Your story provides the context for your experiences. And what I want to share with you is just a 2-minute video clip that I've entitled Coming Out to the Edge, and I'll let DeWitt Jones speak it to you.
The power of vision is extraordinary. It transforms the way we look at the world. It can take us from flapping in the middle of the flock to soaring to heights we've never dreamed of. But we have to be willing to trust it, to come out to our edge. Because it's here on the edge that we find the winds to take us higher. And it's not just the external edges that we have to test. It's the internal ones as well. If we're going to really learn to soar, we have to know ourselves as well as we know our craft. I realized that if I was going to take it higher in my own life, I had to spend time not just with what I do, but with who I am. Boy, that's a lot harder. At least it was for me. Discovering who I was and being comfortable with it, a lot harder than taking a photograph. And yet I knew that was the move from good frame to great frame. That was the edge I'd have to press. That edge in each of our lives between success and significance. That subtle edge between being the best in the world and being the best for the world. Not an easy shift. But every time that I'd lose faith that I might ever be able to make it, I'd need someone who had. And they'd serve as a beacon to show me it was possible.
So at your tables, would you spend a couple of minutes just talking about what did you just hear there? What are you thinking after watching that? Anything resonate with you? sitting with all your friends.
Yes.
So would a couple of you please share with the rest of us what are some things that you talked about at your table? What are some observations you had watching that clip? Yes, sir. When we started the firm, my business partner is a former NHL hockey player. His name's Joe Day. And when Joe and I started the firm, frequently he and I would go home at night and we would say to our spouses, we're not sure that this is going to work. Because you cannot get two people who are much more different than Joe Day and Rob Elliott. We are radically different human beings. We think that's why we have a really good business today, because the things that I do not do well, he does exceptionally well, and vice versa. But early, when we started the firm, we were battling for intellectual control. We both wanted to be the brightest guy in the world. We both wanted to be the best. And instead of being the best for the firm, we wanted to be the best for ourselves. And we battled each other all the time. Now, fortunately, Joe and I were bright enough that when we started the firm, we brought a minority partner in with us who was the consummate mediator. And he did a beautiful job. It took him about 3 years, but he did a beautiful job of getting Joe and I to really come together and to see the wisdom in each other's ideas. Because what I had to do is I had to stop arguing and start listening. And Joe had to do the same thing. Because I was so confident that I was right and my way was the way that I wasn't being open to being influenced by Joe, because I wanted to be the best. You know, I wanted to be me. So, you know, DeWitt Jones helped me a lot, because I saw that clip in the midst of all of that and started thinking about what would it look like if I was the best for Pondera instead of being the best for me. Other observations that you have about that clip, other things that triggered your thinking? Yes?
I mean, it's definitely a good idea to try the educational ad. Many times we are forced by the economic necessities of feeding the family or taking some responsibility. So we have a fear of trying something new or something what is on your plate, you know, just keep doing it. And then after some time it's hard to switch, because you get used to that, and whether you like it or not, so most of the time it goes in that. And then, as you said, the fear of failure, if we do another business, what happens? What happens to my family's safety net?
Animus tibiesi, the courage to be you. And to your point, for years I wanted to start a consulting company. I wanted to do this for years. And my wife and I always discussed that it was not the right time because of the financial commitments we had. And I had a salary and I had fringe benefits and all those kind of things. I got to ground zero when I got fired from a job. There was the window of opportunity. Now, a lot of people come to the edge and they realize, I got to change. Not me. I had to have my ass pushed off that cliff to get me to realize that it was time to change. It was time to step up and do something finally. Instead of just thinking about it and talking about it, I needed to actually do it. We try to help people learn to get their wings, so when you come to the edge that you can learn to fly, that you can make a decision to do that. And I realize it is not easy. It's not easy because you've got lots of people around you that would like you to keep doing what you're doing now. It's just like an alcoholic that gets sober. Suddenly the friends have lost the life of the party. You know, we liked him when he drank more, or we liked her when she did this more, and it's not easy to change. It's not. We have a lot of influences around us that don't want us to change. A lot of things. Other observations about the clip? Yes?
This idea of being self-aware. Be able to look at yourself and go.
Absolutely. Yep. Thank you. At Pondera, we believe the critical attributes of leadership are self-awareness and selfless service to other people. Yes? Thank you. Are you a sound technician? Or just a bright guy?
No, I never did like people to scratch the blackboard. That's part of the better.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So we tell our clients all the time. Matter of fact, Mark was saying to me before that when he read the article, there were things in the article that he thought were missing thinking about leadership. I don't share that article with you believing that I think that that article describes everything of leadership. For me, leadership is about those two things. Leadership is about knowing yourself and believing that you're here to serve other people. And if you can get those two things, you can lead. So the self-awareness piece is we believe it's impossible to lead other people until you can lead yourself. What do I mean by that? Every one of you have encountered people in your life that were inauthentic in their leadership of you. I had a situation with my father where my father would tell me the importance of following the rules and doing the right thing, and that he would take me to the hunting camp and we would do illegal things hunting. It was like, wait a second, Dad. I mean, what's the message? What's really going on here? You know? My dad was not living authentically in terms of the things that he said he really believed and how we behaved. You know? We cannot lead other people unless we are leading our lives authentically, unless we are living the lives that we want to live from that standpoint. So we have to gain insight into the way our preferences unconsciously shape your style of behavior and your patterns of communication, and you have to become aware of your impact of your style on other people. At Pondera, we have a personality assessment that gives you feedback on 27 scales of personality. And what we measure is a person's preferences. We don't measure how people behave. We measure how people prefer to behave. Because we're all capable of behaving different than our preferences. But in our work, the thing that we believe is if there's alignment between your preferences and your work, it's a lot easier. That if you're always working outside your preferences, it's tough to maintain that on a consistent basis and to be able to do it well. And the other thing is we have to become aware of our style. We classify personality into 8 styles in our work. I am a relator. My least preferred is the analyzer. I shared that earlier, that when I was a business manager, I hated doing the analyzing work. My business partner is an analyzer. His least preferred is the relator. We are polar opposites of each other. And we encourage our clients all the time, hire people who are different than you are. Don't hire people who are similar to you. Hire people who are different than you are, because you will be better for it, because they will bring things to the table that you don't have. But you got to realize that a relator negatively impacts an analyzer, and an analyzer negatively impacts a relator. So I had to learn about the things about me, just being me, rub Joe the wrong way and vice versa, and then to develop the emotional intelligence enough to realize when I needed to back off. So let me give you just a small little example. When my partner Joe comes into the office in the morning, he walks right in front of our receptionist, hardly ever says hi, goes right over to his office in the corner, goes in the office, shuts the door, and spends a significant part of the day by himself. When I come into the office in the morning, I go around and I say hi to anybody who's in the office before I go into my office and have my first appointment. Do I stop in and say hi to Joe in the morning? No, because Joe doesn't want me saying hi to him. He doesn't want me interrupting him. He's working. But the other people who are more relational like me, they enjoy, connecting. But I've had to learn, because I would love to go in and ask Joe how last night was, and ask about Nick and Luke, and did they win the hockey game and all, But I don't do that with Joe, because that's not what Joe needs from me. So I got to shut off that aspect of me so that I can get the best Joe from that standpoint. We encourage, if you want to improve your self-awareness, get yourself access to a comprehensive personality assessment, something that will really help you look at yourself objectively. It's like holding up the mirror and getting a chance to see yourself. That's the gift that I bring to clients, is I get a chance to hold up the mirror and to be able to say, okay, is this you? And, the interesting thing about our tool is that if people answer the questions honestly, I can tell you really, really accurately who you are. But the good thing about our tool is if you're not being honest with me, I can tell the fact that you're not being honest with me. And we can talk about that then, that you weren't really willing to talk to me about who you really were. You wanted me to believe you were somebody other than who you said you were with the way you answered the questions. But the gift that I bring people is I hold up the mirror and I get people to have an opportunity to take a look at themselves. And once they verify that that's me, and then I start to say, okay, well, what part of you just being you creates problems for you? And, where is it that you think you need to start to think about making changes in your behavior? So this is what our assessment looks like. We give you feedback on core temperament, thinking and decision-making, self-management, and how you interact with others. A second tool that we use with our clients is we provide 360 feedback, where we interview the people all around them. And the thing that we insist on in our firm is we will not do online anonymous 360 feedback. We insist on interviewing people, because I don't see you as you are, I see you as I am. And so when you're giving me feedback on him, it's based on how you are, not necessarily how he is. And so I want to interview you, and so when I ask you the questions about him, I understand the lens that you're using for thinking about him. So that when I sit down with you and I give you a summary of all the people that I talked to, I can help you interpret the data. Because if any of you have received anonymous online feedback, you often, what does that mean? Where did that come from? It's confusing. You have someone interview for you, and you'll get much better data, you'll get much better feedback, but it'll really hold up the mirror for you and get you to look at yourself more clearly. The second thing, I said self-awareness is one. The second thing is selfless service to other people. And this is a story that our president is going to enjoy, because when I was a superintendent of the schools in 1985, I went back to my hometown of East Taos, Michigan, and I was superintendent of the county school district. And I decided to do a forum on leadership. And I said to my father, Dad, I cannot afford to bring a really good speaker in. Can you help me find someone who would come in and talk to our 150 students that were in leadership? We had captains of teams, and we got the presidents of clubs and all that kind of stuff from 4 high schools, and we did a leadership seminar for a day. So he called his buddy Earl Laughlin. Earl Laughlin was my father's high school classmate. In 1985, Earl Laughlin was a 4-star general in the United States Air Force, and he was running Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. Had 5,000 men and women under his command at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So 1985, we don't have PowerPoint, we don't have computers, we have an overhead projector, and we have transparencies. So Earl is in my high school gymnasium, and Earl puts a slide up that shows his org chart. Now I'm using a business org chart here, but he was at the top as the general, and then he showed, it was much larger than this, but it showed the 5,000 men and women that were in his command. And all the kids were oohing and ahhing, and I mean, they thought, boy, we're really in front of some powerful guy. And Earl takes the transparency and he flips it upside down, and he says, the reality is, he said, I don't do anything at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base that makes a difference. It's those 5,000 men and women that make the difference. He said, my job as a leader is to lift them up. My job is to provide the resources they need. My job is to remove the obstacles that get in the way of them doing their job. That's my job. My job is to support them. He said, I'm at the bottom of my chart, not at the top of my chart. He said to the kids, don't be impressed with me, be impressed with all those 5,000 men and women that actually get the things done. I was just sharing one of my frustrations with Mark and Teresa about the fact that the president of Blue Cross Blue Shield just got a $20 million bonus last year, you know, for his performance. And I thought, what a crock. You know, it wasn't him, it was all the other people that are a part of that organization that made that happen. I mean, we are so still in this day out of touch with the fact that leadership is about everybody else. It's not about the person at the top. And yet we've got compensation systems that are just wildly out of whack in terms of what we do for top leaders instead of taking care of everybody else. So why am I showing you this picture? Why was that picture on my title slide? What's the point that I'm trying to make about discovering your authentic leadership? Yes, sir. Nobody gets to the top without help. Nobody gets to the top without help. 1985, when Tom Balk was our associate superintendent for vocational instruction, and he and I were brainstorming about this seminar, this day-long seminar, and Earl coming and all that kind of stuff, and we talked about leadership. And I said to Tom, wouldn't it be cool as a way of showing the kids about leadership is if we could have a picture of a turtle on top of a fence post as a way of illustrating that concept to kids. And I'll be darned if the next morning when Tom was driving to work, there was a turtle in the middle of the road, and he stopped, and he put that turtle on top of that fence post, and he took that picture in 1985. That's where that picture came from. But it's the notion that as leaders, we don't get to the top without help. Somebody else has got to help put us there. So we're going to watch a short clip here called The Physics of the Quest. This is from what a lot of people would say is a chick flick. It's from the movie Eat, Pray, and Love with Julia Roberts. I'm going to let you watch that. We'll talk about that.
For you, a goodbye gift.
Gitu. Please, you heal me.
You healed me too, Gadut. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have come back to Bali, and I wouldn't have come back to myself.
You want coffee? Roast?
Coffee. Terima kasih.
I get you coffee.
You fly back to America soon?
In 2 hours. Have you ever been on an airplane, Gadut?
Ketut cannot fly on aeroplane. Ketut have no teeth. You are good friend to me. You are like daughter. When I die, you will come back to Bali, come to my cremation. Balinese cremation ceremony is very fun. You will like it.
Okay.
You still smile with your liver, like I tell you.
Yes.
You still meditate like your guru in India, did you?
Yes.
You happy now with God?
Yes.
You love your new boyfriend?
I ended it.
Don't understand why you do that.
I couldn't keep my balance.
Please, listen to Ketut. Sometimes to lose balance for love is part of living balanced life.
In the end, I've come to believe in something I call the physics of the quest. A force in nature governed by laws as real as the laws of gravity. The rule of quest physics goes something like this. If you're brave enough to leave behind everything familiar and comforting, which can be anything from your house to bitter old resentments, and set out on a truth-seeking journey, either externally or internally. And if you are truly willing to regard everything that happens to you on that journey as a clue, and if you accept everyone you meet along the way as a teacher, and if you are prepared, most of all, to face and forgive some very difficult realities about yourself, then the truth will not be withheld from you.
So spend a couple minutes talking at your table. What did you hear there? What's the message that I was hoping you might get out of watching that? Did you ever meet General O'Loughlin?
No, I did go to Brighton in the first place. I lived in Ohio at the time he was there. But nope, never met him.
Yeah, he was an amazing man. When I was a kid growing up in high school, he was at Wurtsmith Air Force Base up in Oscoda, and he ran bombing missions to Vietnam over and over and over again.
The only general that you might have heard of that I worked for is General Hertling. I worked directly for him when I was in Germany for 2 years. He actually came to the hospital when my daughter was born and ensured that I was treated well.
Oh,
His wife was
that's great.
awesome. But now he's retired. He's doing great things.
Cool.
Not discussing the building. That story reminds me of a story I heard about a tree. Where are like trees in your life? So you're the tree, right? And there are people in your life who are like branches. They're there. They're not really. They wave back and forth. There are people in your life who are like leaves, where they fall off depending on the season. But you need them in your life, and sometimes they drop down and become seeds. Then there are people in your life who are like the roots of the tree, who are your strength, and they're constantly, typically your family, but not always. So when you think about that, when people come and visit you, whether it be a squirrel or you're a leaf, they're all something that's a part of your life and the tree. So I saw that, I heard that, I was thinking the same thing. That's what that story brought to me. So,
You know what would be great?
what's that?
When I'm finished.
What's that?
When I finish today and you go up to close things up, you'll tell that story. No, that would be great. Share with the rest of us what you discussed. Yes?
Without love, there's nothing.
I agree with that. However, that wasn't the primary message, but I agree. Other observations? Got to be willing to let go. Anything else? Yes. Got to be open to feedback from others. Yes.
I guess if you're the leader, just because your employees are under you doesn't mean you can't learn from them and take into account what they're saying.
That's right. There is no one in my professional life that has ever influenced me as much as Greg Kerr. Greg Kerr is 32 years old. Greg Kerr has worked with me at Pondera for 10 years, came to us right out of Grand Valley with a degree in criminal justice. And the only thing that Greg knew when he graduated from college was that he never wanted to do anything with criminal justice. And the reason he came to Pondera is because my business partner, Joe, taught an ice hockey coaching class at Grand Valley. And what Joe taught in ice hockey coaching was the philosophy of Pondera. And Greg was very impressed with that and said, I don't have a job. I don't know what I want to do. Would you guys be willing to give me a job? And we said, no. but we'll give you an unpaid internship for 3 months, and we'll let you learn from us for 3 months, and we'll see where it goes. And 10 years later, Greg is probably the most irreplaceable person in our firm today. Just an unbelievable young man. He manages all of my client relationships, works with all of our consultants to support them, and now he's starting to do consulting work on his own as well. And just a phenomenal person. But the thing about Greg is Greg always talks to me about the brutal truth. Greg always corrects me in emails. He corrects me when I speak. If he was here today, he'd be taking notes at the back of the room. He's in Texas on vacation. And then when we got in the car and we were driving back to the office, he'd be breaking me down about, Rob, you did this well, but you should do this differently. He's a young guy that works for me that I keep learning from him. I am so blessed that I have Greg Kerr in my life because he is always giving me feedback, always, and I love it. Any other observations about the clip? Got to be willing to change. And so what I'd like you for a couple of minutes to think about is who are some of the key influencers that have impacted you in your life? And I'm going to tell a story about a few of mine that hopefully will jog some things for some of you. First of all, one of my first key influencers was my high school football coach, Ted Guthard. And when I was a sophomore in high school, Ted Guthard came to town. And my freshman year, we played 6 games. I never was in a single play in 6 games. Never got on the field. My sophomore year in the JV team, in the 9-game schedule, I get to play 6 plays. I got in 6 times in 9 games. I was horrible, absolutely horrible. I was not a tough kid, didn't believe in myself. I loved football, but I wasn't a good athlete. For whatever reason, Ted Guthard saw something in me, and at the end of that sophomore season, he was the varsity coach. At the end of that sophomore season, he came to me in the hallway one day, and he put his arm around me, and he said, Elliot, he said, I'm going to get you in the weight room. And he said, I'm going to change your diet. He said, I'm going to get you stronger. He said, you're going to play for me next year as a junior. Ted Guthard got me in the car, took me to my dad's office, talked to my dad, took me up to Oscoda 20 minutes away, bought me a big, huge thing of protein pills. I ate 70 protein pills a day for 9 months. I'd have a bag that I'd carry with me in school, and I would be eating protein pills all day. Ted Guthard convinced my mother to make a milkshake for me every night with ice cream, a banana, a can of beer in it, that he did everything he could to put weight on me, and he had me in the weight room all the time. And by the start of my junior year, I had put on 20 pounds of muscle, but more than anything else, I became a confident person because of the fact that this guy believed in me and got me working hard. And my junior year, I started on defense. And I played the whole season on defense. Unfortunately, my senior year, Ted left and went to another school district. But my senior year, I never walked off the field. I played special teams, I played offense, I played defense, I did everything. None of that would have been possible without Ted Guthard. But it wasn't the football gift that he gave me. He gave me the gift of the impact of believing in people. What Ted Guthard taught me as a 16-year-old kid is that when you see something in someone and you recognize it and you nurture it and you develop it, you can change people's lives. Ted Guthard changed my life. I would not be who I am today if it hadn't been for that high school football coach. And not because of football that he taught me the importance of believing in myself. And, when other people were not believing in me. Another person was Madeline Hunter. I started out my career as a high school teacher and a coach. I taught accounting and business law and general business. And I had a woman who was internationally famous, Madeline Hunter, for teaching people how to teach. Not about your content, but about your pedagogy, the methods that you used. And one of the things that Madeline Hunter taught me is this. Madeline Hunter one day said, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. But she said you can salt its oats so it's thirsty and it wants to drink. And she said that's what great teachers do, that's what great leaders do. They salt the oats of their horses so that they want to drink. And it was a phenomenal thing that whenever I ran into a student that didn't want to learn, Instead of me thinking that it was your problem, I realized there's 3 fingers pointing back at me that it was my problem, and the reason you weren't learning because I wasn't creative enough yet to figure out how to connect with you and to get you to learn. And Madeline Hunter, from this, that wasn't her picture, but that concept of salting oats, that I realized that as a teacher and then later as a leader, that it was up to me. It wasn't what my people were doing, it was what I was doing. Was I creating the conditions for them to want to be motivated? I do another presentation for my clients called RE Motivation, and it's the 16 variables of motivation. Are you aware that there are 16 different ways that you can motivate people? And the important thing is to know what variables each one of the people that work for you are most important to them. Because you got to change your behavior based on what different people need. And that was a concept that I learned from Madeline Hunter in my leadership. Another one was John Luther, and this was a book that I read from John Luther. And what I read from John is when you think of a nice thing to do for someone, don't just think it, do it. When you have a kind thought, express it, bring it to life, put it into action. If you admire something someone has said or done, speak up and say so. His life and yours will be the richer for it. Never be content to think nice thoughts. Express them, do them. Prior to reading that, I was a guy that always thought a lot of nice things about people, but didn't act on them often enough. And John Luther changed my life in terms of me reading that book, reading that quote, and realizing that I needed to start to interact with people differently, that it was not enough to think things, I needed to actually take action on my thoughts, and I needed to encourage and praise and lift other people up. Another mentor of mine was Dick Foster. When I used to be the superintendent of the schools in Cedar Springs. I was there from 1989 to 1992. And when I went into Cedar Springs, we were the poorest school district in all of Kent County. We had more families receiving social services support than even more than the Grand Rapids Public Schools. We are a very poor school district. And when I became superintendent there in 1989, we had not passed a tax increase for 13 years. There was no athletic program, there was no band, there was no art. I mean, it was a bare, we had buses that were parked in the garage because we couldn't afford to run the buses. Parents had to drive their kids to school. The school district was a disaster when I went in there. Mike Washburn was the superintendent in Forest Hills. Mike Washburn used to bring Dick Foster from California, a consultant, in to work with his 3 high schools in Forest Hills. And what Mike Washburn did for Cedar Springs is that he would pay for Dick Foster to come for a week, and he gave Cedar Springs one of those 5 days. Never got any publicity for it. He just knew that it was the right thing to do, and he made Foster available. And one of the things that Dick Foster said one night when he was working with my administrative team, anytime you do something for someone over the age of 3 that they're capable of doing for themselves, the message that you're sending that person is they're not capable. And as a parent at that time with 2 young kids, I realized that I needed to change my parenting in a hurry because there was way too many things I was doing for my children that they could do for themselves. And I also started to think about my leadership and about the number of times that I was stepping in as a leader and I was doing things for other people that they were capable of doing for themselves. Dick Foster had a huge impact on my leadership and my parenting because of that statement that he made to us one evening when he was working with us. And the last one I'll share with you is Walter Hybrenson. I coached high school lacrosse at East Grand Rapids High School for 17 years. And at the end of the 3rd year of coaching the freshman team, and we had been undefeated for 3 years, I had a great group of assistant coaches that worked for me. At the end of the season, my assistant coach, Jeff Gusky, gave me a book by Walter Hendrickson. I'm going to go back. The title of the book was The Thoughts from the Diary of a Desperate Man. Thoughts from the Diary of a Desperate Man. And I looked at the book and I looked at Gusky and I said, "You think I'm a desperate man? I mean, why are you giving me this book?" He said, "Elliot, I'm convinced that you're going to read something in that book that's going to resonate with you. And when you do, I think you'll come and talk to me about it." Well, this is what I read in that book. For the most part, men love competition and hate confrontation. A man may love a hard game of tennis, but hate firing a problematic employee, choosing instead to send a subordinate to do the job for him. You confront because you seek to help the one being confronted. Confrontation is one of the highest expressions of love. And it goes on. When done in love and compassion, confrontation is one of the kindest things you can do for another person. A refusal to confront when needed is one of the most selfish things you can do. Confrontation is not criticizing another, it's helping that person so that he will not be further hurt by his behavior. So I read that, I go over to Gusky, and I said, okay, you're tired. What do you mean I'm tired? Well, I'm the good cop, you're the bad cop. I'm the one that's always praising kids, I'm the one that's always encouraging kids, I'm the one that's always talking about the positive things going on. You're the guy that's always carrying the bad news. You have the difficult conversations with parents, and you want it to be different. He said, damn right I want it to be different. He said, I'm tired of these kids hating me and loving you, and yet I'm the one that really makes a difference. And I said, Jeff, I don't criticize kids, I don't criticize parents because I like them. He said, bullshit. You don't criticize kids, you don't criticize parents because you want them to like you. You're putting yourself ahead of the kids. It was like, whoa. Gusky, you got me at my core, man. You got me at my core. I was putting myself ahead of the kids because I wanted people to like me. So I was talked about the positive things. I didn't do the heavy lifting. And Gusky said, Elliot, I am not asking you to be me because he knows he's a critic and I'm an optimist. I mean, we're polar opposites, why we were such good coaches together. But he said, man, you have got to lean in once in a while and let me do some of the positives, and you once in a while have got to dole out some of the criticism because it's not fair to these kids that they look at us the way they do. Jeff Gusky, by giving me that book, by me reading that book, by me going and having a conversation, and by hitting me at my core, got me to really take a look at myself. Now, my wife and the people that I work with wish that I had not read that because I've gotten really good at conflict. I like dealing with difficult things. And I'm willing to bet for every single person in this room, if you think about the opportunities in your life when you got better as a human being, it was always conflict. It was always when you were challenged. It was always when you were in a difficult spot that you figured out how to get better from it. Conflict is a really good thing. And yet in the organizations, it is a cancer that eats away at organizations because we don't talk about what's going on. Tomorrow morning, I'm working with the leadership team of one of my clients. It's an architectural firm, and there will be 6 executives in the room with me. And one of the things that I will have on the table tomorrow, in the middle of the table is a little mayonnaise jar, and inside that is a bunch of Post-it notes. And when I had them individually give me, number 1, what are the undiscussables? What are the things that they as a team do not talk about that are on their minds but they don't deal with? Number 2, what are the things that are virtually impossible to do in their minds that if they could figure out how to do them would radically change their team and their organization? And number 3, are there any other dynamics going on between the people in the room that we need to deal with so we can get the team to a better place? And so tomorrow morning, I'll open that jar up and I'll start pulling topics out of the jar. And we'll start talking about those uncomfortable things because they don't do it. And I've got to teach them that you can talk about uncomfortable things and you can get to a better place. Because this used to be me. I'm not good at confrontation, so please unscramble this phrase quietly to yourself for a surprise message. I've learned to get better because a refusal to confront when needed is one of the most selfish. Here, I thought I was a magnanimous guy. I wasn't. I was selfish. You confront because you seek to help the one being confronted. Confrontation is one of the highest expressions of love. The thing that I believe is feedback is a gift. I have another workshop I do for clients on giving and receiving feedback, and I say feedback's a gift. The thing that I believe about feedback is that just like in your lives, your personal lives, when you get a gift, I don't know about you, but there's sometimes people give me a gift and I go, what in the world is this? And as soon as they're gone, I throw it away. There are other gifts that people give me that I think are pretty cool, but they're not for me, and I re-gift them to somebody else. And then there are other things that people give me that I really cherish and I keep, and I believe that when people give us feedback, when they share their perception with us, it's the same thing. Sometimes people give us feedback and we dismiss it. It just doesn't fit. It doesn't make sense. Other times we think, boy, that's a cool idea, but I think it applies more to this person than it does to me, and we end up sharing it with somebody else. But then there are other times that people give us feedback that it really resonates. And if we would just approach giving people feedback like we do with presents, that I'm giving this to you, and you get to decide what you do with it. But what happens too much in leadership is we assign too much value to giving the feedback, and we think you've got to do something with it. You don't have to do anything with it. It's your choice. I'm giving you a gift, and you get to decide. If I'm going to talk to you about something difficult, I'm giving you a gift. You get to decide what you're going to do with it. How many of you are familiar with Brene Brown? A couple of people are. If you haven't, next time you get to a computer, Google Brene Brown. She has the most famous TED Talk of all time called The Power of Vulnerability. It's a wonderful, wonderful video. I am not going to show you that tonight because it's 17 minutes long. However, I would encourage you to watch it. And if you watch The Power of Vulnerability by Brene Brown and you like it, then Google The Anatomy of Trust by Brene Brown. Because what Brene Brown does in that video, and it's only a 22-minute video, she breaks the elements of trust into an acronym called BRAVING. And she does a really good job of explaining how we build or how we destroy trust in relationships. But Brene is wonderful in that. And the reason that I think vulnerability is so important, at Pondera, we believe establishing vulnerability-based trust is essential to maximize the effectiveness of who you lead. I cannot lead another person unless I know what's in their head and on their heart. And how do I really know what's in someone's head or on their heart? How do I really know? How do you really know? Pardon? You have to make it safe enough for them to tell you what's really going on. So how do you make it safe enough for people to tell you what's really going on with them? You got to go first. You got to share your uncomfortable things. If your employees don't hear you say, I don't know, if they don't hear you say, I need help, if they don't hear you say, I screwed up, they will not model that behavior for you. But if they hear you do those things, they will model that behavior. But if you have the image that you always got it together, that you don't make mistakes, you always have the right answer, you always know what's going on, then they're not going to confide in you. Vulnerability is absolutely essential to effectively lead. You've got to be willing to put it out there. And I want to be clear. I work with lots of leaders that are unwilling to do that. But the thing that I've been able to convince them to do is, all right, if that's not you, then you make sure you've got someone close to you on your team that does that for you, and they let you know what's going on with your people. So you may not be willing to go there, but you better be darn well sure that you make somebody else available to your people so that they can keep you informed of what's going on. Discovering your authentic leadership, transformative effects of the loss of a job, personal illness, death of a close friend or relative, feelings of being excluded, discriminated against, rejected. I told you one of the seminal points of my life was getting fired from a job. It was I thought it was the worst day of my life. It was the best day of my life. The best day of my life was the day I got fired from a job, because it opened a door of opportunity for me that I hadn't had the courage on my own to walk through. So what I'd like you to spend just a couple of minutes at your table talking about is, who are some of those key influences in your life, and what'd you learn from them? Just share with each other, just one or two. Who are a couple of key people? Do you have a business card?
You know, I do.
What I'll do is, I will send you this PowerPoint.
Thank you.
So you can share it with everybody else.
Is it okay? I was going to ask you that.
Yeah.
If it's okay for us to
Yeah.
share with everyone.
Yep. I'll send you a PDF of it.
In here someplace. It's the problem with having this military.
If it's
wallet.
easier, I can give you my card and just have you email me. But
I got it. But I'm going to just write down the email address I want you to send it to, though.
oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah, it'd be great coaching for me to look at it.
Okay, so what I'll do is he's going to give me the flash drive tonight.
Okay,
I'll make a copy and send it to you.
that'd be great. Thank you. Quickly, let's hear a couple stories. Who's willing to talk about a key influence in their life and why? Got one?
Yeah. Called him Sam Spade. His name wasn't Sam, his name was Spade. He was actually my high school government teacher. And in the election of 1964 between Barry Goldwater and Lyndon Johnson, for a class project, we had to write a 5-page paper on who we'd vote for and why. Turn them in. Next day says, now your next assignment is write a 2 or 3-page paper for the other guy. Taught me right then and there, there's always 2 sides to every story. Look at both sides before you jump to a conclusion.
That's a great story. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. One more. Anybody else? Let's hear one more.
Back when I was a young supervisor working at a manufacturing company, we had a temporary CEO come in for a period of time. Pulled him out of retirement. Everybody thought, oh, here we go, right? But he just had this style, a way of correcting you. He just knew he cared about you. He could say the toughest things right to you, cut you right to the heart. And I always remember that's the kind of leader I want to be. I want to be Gene, right?
Good.
Yeah.
Good for you and good
He
that
always
you...
came in the morning and said, hi, how you guys doing?
I'm going to share my PowerPoint with you guys. If you have any questions, there is additional information that in here that you're free to take a look at, but I'll share that with you. If you have any questions, if I can be of help to any of you individually or with your firms, we'd welcome the opportunity up on Dara. The thing that we do essentially, 1, we do one-on-one coaching with leaders. 2, we work with leadership teams to help teams learn to work together more effectively. And 3, we have our own proprietary personality that I referenced. It's part of our coaching. It's a part of our team effectiveness work. And then most of our clients embed us in their hiring process that we help people evaluate talent. Is this person a good fit for the role? How well are they going to work with a hiring manager? How well are they going to assimilate into the team? And although that's the basic work that we do every day. So thank you very much. Really appreciate the ability to be with you tonight. Yes?
So the personality assessment, is that something that you guys offer outside of the hiring firm, or is that something you do?
We do it for private. We do it for private individuals. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Anything else?